uncontrollable. We ought to just try and land it.
Think so? Okay, let's head for LA.
But just as they prepare to land in Los Angeles, something gives way in the tail of the plane.
Did you feel that?
Yep. Okay, give me slats. This is a bitch.
Is it?
Yeah.
The plane dives straight down from 18,000 feet. To avoid collisions, Los Angeles Control has warned the pilots of nearby planes that Alaska 261 is in difficulty. These pilots now report back to the tower.
That plane has just started to do a big, huge plunge.
Yep.
Yes, sir. He is definitely in a nose down position, descending quite rapidly. Definitely out of control. Plane's inverted, sir. Okay. Yeah, he's inverted.
The pilots have difficulty reaching the controls. The plane is upside down, but they believe they might be able to roll the plane out of the dive.
Mayday! Push and roll! Push and roll! Kick, damn it! Push! 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 Push the blue side up!
They tried to fly the airplane even upside down. They never for a moment believed that they could not find a way to control this airplane.
Push! I'm pushing! Okay, let's kick rudder! Left rudder! Left rudder! Can't reach it! Okay! Right rudder! Right rudder!
Plane was being knocked from side to side. It turned upside down. It was spinning. Persons were being thrown against the walls of the plane, falling out of their seats, and the cockpit voice recorder screaming unbelievable, horrible last few minutes of their lives.
Are we flying? We're flying! We're flying! Tell them what we're doing. Let me just... damn. At least upside down, we're flying. Yeah.
And it was so violently upside down that the pilots were hanging from their shoulder straps. Passengers don't have shoulder straps.
Here we go.
And he just hit the water. Yes, sir. He hit the water. He's down.
After a terrifying 60-second dive, Flight 261 hit the Pacific Ocean at close to 250 miles an hour. Rescue helicopters were soon at the crash site, but there were no survivors. The plane had broken up on impact. 88 passengers and crew, including 3 young children, died instantly. Fred Miller lost his daughter Abby and her husband Ryan.
These people suffered on the way down. This was not a pretty way to die. One witness said it spun at times, almost like a top. And he said, to think people, somebody who has a life to live is in there, dying. He says it's one of the most horrifying memories I'll ever have.
Susan De Silva lost her husband, Dean.
I know that they went through a horrible, horrible experience. This was a violent end these people suffered. There were no bodies that were intact or even close to intact. And they were conscious for a long time before it all came apart.
Colleen Worley died along with her fiancé, Monty.
As a mother, keep waiting for for your child to come home. And Colleen had traveled so much in her life that it was unusual not to have her just walk in the door. All this time you're thinking, something caused this, something made this happen, and I want to find out who's responsible for this.
The investigation into Alaska Airlines Flight 261 began to swing into gear, but the wreckage lay 700 feet down. So National Transportation Safety Board officials called on Navy submersibles to retrieve the plane from the seabed.
We set up a base of operations, and we had a remote operating vehicle with the side-scanning sonar, which they used to map the debris field and get an idea of how widely spread the wreckage was.
At the National Transportation Safety Board headquarters in Washington, the investigators' immediate concern was to find out what had brought the plane down. The first clues came from the cockpit voice recordings.
LA, Alaska 261, we're with you. We're at 22.5. We have a jam stabilizer, and we're maintaining altitude with difficulty.
We immediately suspected some problem in the tail of the airplane, which is where the controls are. There's something was wrong back there, and that was the key piece of wreckage to look for.
The MD-83 that crashed was a revised version of the Douglas Corporation's DC-9, which was an extremely popular plane. Over 2,000 were delivered to airlines worldwide. The engines were at the rear of the plane, and the distinctive T-shaped tail was an essential element of the design.
In a big turbojet aircraft, one of the rather brilliant elements of the design is that since you're going to be loading passengers and cargo, you want to be able to have that aircraft loaded a little nose heavy or a little tail heavy. Well, in order to do that, you actually had to have that entire stabilizer moving. But the ones that are the most difficult to engineer are the T-tailed airplanes, where you have the vertical stabilizer and the horizontal sitting on top. And we call that stabilizer trim. And that is an essential element of what makes these aircraft so usable.
In the MD-83, a motorized jack screw in the tail moves the horizontal stabilizer up and down. As the stabilizer moves up, the nose of the airplane moves down. As the stabilizer moves down, the nose of the airplane moves up. But what role had the over 70 centimeters long jack screw played in the loss of Flight 261? The investigators were anxious to inspect it as soon as it was recovered from the seabed.
The jack screw wasn't mated with the nut that it screws into. It was just by itself. And the nut was found in another piece of structure a few feet away from where the jack screw was. To have a screw separate itself from a nut with very thick threads surprised us. Secondly, we noticed that there was a curled piece of brass around the jack screw, and all of the threads that you can see here, these ridges, were gone. They had been stripped out, and the remnants of those were found coiled on the jack screw.
Once the thread had been stripped off the nut, the jack screw could no longer turn. The pilots could not have known the real nature of the problem.
The crew was confronted with a situation that had never occurred before. There is no failed jack screw procedure in the quick reference handbooks that they have available. There is no training for it.
When the jack screw jammed, the pilots were unable to adjust the stabilizer.
We felt that it was due to the fact that these nut threads had worn away, and it was just too hard for that jack screw under the power of the electric motor to turn. That gave the flight crew an indication that there was a problem.
The crew knew they had a problem in the tailplane, but they had no idea what. Two motors controlled the jack screw, and they tried each of them in turn. But the pilots' attempts to free the jammed stabilizer made their situation worse.
We're at 23.7. Request. Yeah, we got it under control here.
No, we don't.
Where they went wrong was that they wanted to try both the alternate and the primary trim motor